Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dig into the invisible code that's running in the background of our minds. That hidden psychological operating system that kind of programs so many of our modern anxieties. So let me ask you, does this sound at all familiar? You finally get a moment to yourself. The to-do list is empty, it's a quiet afternoon, but instead of feeling relief, you just get this nagging anxiety that you should be doing something, anything productive. Or what about this one? It's 3 in the morning, and for some reason, your brain decides now is the perfect time to replay that slightly awkward thing you said at a party 6 years ago. And you're just analyzing every single word, every pause, totally convinced you failed some social test you didn't even know you were taking. And then there's this one, and it might be the most unsettling of all. Do you ever just feel flat? Like you're watching your own life happen from behind a pane of glass, and you just can't quite tune in to the same emotional frequency everyone else seems to be on. Okay, so if you just nodded along to any of that, even a little bit, listen up, because this is the most important part. These are not personal flaws. They're not signs that you are broken. They are symptoms. They're glitches in an invisible operating system that was installed in your mind a long time ago. So here's the game plan for this explainer. We're going to start by looking at this modern glitch. Then we'll trace it all the way back to the original operating system that got written in your childhood. We'll look at how a generational patch updated that code, figure out why it glitches out today, and finally, talk about how to maybe start an update. Okay, so first up, the modern glitch. That constant buzz of anxiety, the burnout, that feeling of being a spectator in your own life. We usually treat these things as the problem, but they're not. They're more like error messages. They're signals from your system that an old program is running in a world it was never, ever designed for.
Which brings us to Section 2, your childhood OS. Let's get right to the source code, our foundational software. I'm talking about our core beliefs about safety, about our own worth, about connection. All of that gets coded during our most formative years. And this usually isn't about one big dramatic event. It's about the emotional atmosphere we grew up in.
Now, a huge piece of this initial coding comes from something called parentification. This is what happens when a kid has to step up and be the responsible one, the peacemaker, the little caretaker, the tiny adult in the room. And this isn't just about being mature, it's a survival strategy that installs a really critical line of code. Productivity equals safety. Being useful equals being loved. And another key piece of code gets written by something called childhood emotional neglect, or CEN. Now, this isn't about active abuse, it's about an absence. It's the trauma of what didn't happen. It's like shouting into a canyon and hearing no echo. When a kid's feelings aren't seen or validated, they learn a tough lesson, that their inner world isn't real, or at least not worth paying attention to. And really, it all boils down to this single, powerful idea. Your worth got tangled with your usefulness way back when. For so many of us, this became the foundational logic of our whole system. Your value wasn't just a given, it was something you had to earn, over and over, by being good, by being productive, and by not being a burden. Okay, on to Section 3, the generational patch. See, that childhood OS doesn't just exist in a bubble. The whole era we grew up in, it applies a kind of software patch right on top of it, modifying that original code with a whole new set of rules based on the world around us. And just think about how different these patches were. You have Gen X, growing up as latchkey kids in a pretty high-consequence world, literally watching institutions fail on TV. And then you have millennials, raised in the self-esteem movement, told they could be anything, only to graduate right into economic chaos and the very beginning of performing your entire life online. And these different worlds? Well, they installed very different software patches. The Gen X patch installed a program of what you could call radical self-reliance. The core command was, no one is coming to save you, figure it out. The millennial patch, though, installed something more like cognitive dissonance, this massive clash between being told you're special and then facing a world that makes you feel disposable. It creates this weird mix of deep cynicism and stubborn idealism. All right, Section 4, living with old code. So, how does this all connect back to feeling anxious on a quiet Saturday afternoon? Well, this is where it all comes together. Your childhood OS and that generational patch are running at the same time, and sometimes they conflict. The code is it's outdated, and it's causing your system to glitch out in the modern world. So these glitches tend to show up in a few really common ways. Number 1, rest feels unsafe. Why? because your system learned that letting your guard down is when the crisis hits. Number 2, you kind of deflect genuine connection because unconditional love feels, well, it feels suspicious when your core programming says love has to be earned. And number 3, you try to manage everything because control was the only tool you had to create a sense of stability in a world that felt chaotic. When you put it all together, it really comes down to this. Your system wasn't programmed to value your existence. It was programmed to value your output. You learned how to be a human doing, constantly proving your worth, because you were never really taught how to just be a human being. And look, before we move on, I want you to really let this next part sink in. The part of you that developed all these coping mechanisms, that kid didn't fail at anything. That kid survived, using whatever tools they could find to navigate a world that was just too much for them. It was actually an act of incredible strength. So that brings us to our last section, starting the update. What do we do with all this? I mean, you can't just uninstall your childhood, right? But you can start writing new code. The first step to updating your system is just moving from subconscious reaction to conscious awareness. It's about taking back the controls. Here are 4 gentle places to start. First, just recognize the pattern. When that guilt about resting kicks in, just name it. Ah, there's my old survival code. Second, let yourself grieve the absence of what you needed back then. Third, practice echoing yourself back. When you feel something, just notice it without judgment. Give your own feelings the validation they probably never got. And finally, gently remind yourself that the adult you is in charge now. That kid did their job. They can finally rest. And that's really the core question I want to leave you with. That old operating system, it was designed to hold everything together, to stay on high alert, to never, ever stop. You've been holding on so tight for so long. What might it feel like to finally actually let go?